Hello everyone, my name is Wally, and welcome back to Wally Tales. Every story on this channel is made to help you become mentally stronger, emotionally wiser, and physically more disciplined. Today, I want to share a story that completely changed the way I think about waiting for help. The title of today's story is Just Do It Alone. Before you think this story is only about hard work, let me tell you something. Sometimes life becomes so silent that nobody answers your calls, nobody believes in your dreams, and nobody comes to save you. Those moments decide who you become. So, let's begin.
The village looked dead. The ground was cracked like broken glass. Every step raised dry dust into the air. The trees had almost no leaves left. Animals walked slowly with empty eyes. Children stood in long lines, holding small clay pots, hoping there would still be a little water left. There was only one old well in the entire village. Years ago, that well had been full of clear, cold water. It gave life to every family, every farm, and every animal. Now people lowered their buckets and heard only the sound of stones. The water level was almost gone. The village chief looked inside the well with tears in his eyes. "If this continues for 3 more days," he whispered, "our village will not survive." Women began collecting every single drop they could find. Parents stopped washing clothes. Farmers watched their crops slowly die under the burning sun. Every morning, another family packed their belongings and left the village forever. Fear spread faster than hunger. Everyone kept asking the same question: who will save us? Among all those worried faces lived a young man named William. William was only 22 years old. He had no money, no education, no land. His father had died years earlier while trying to protect their small farm during a flood. After that, William lived with his sick mother inside a tiny mud house at the edge of the village. Most people thought William was just another poor young man trying to survive each day. But very few people knew something about him. Whenever everyone accepted defeat, William quietly searched for another way. That evening, William carried 2 empty buckets toward the well. When his turn finally came, he lowered the bucket. Nothing, only stones. An old woman standing beside him smiled sadly. "You came too late." William looked inside the well. He had never seen it this empty before. His heart became heavy. He walked home with empty buckets. His mother looked at him. "No water?" William slowly shook his head. She smiled anyway. "Don't worry, my son. We have survived difficult days before." William forced himself to smile. But deep inside, something felt different. That night, he could not sleep. Outside, the wind carried dry dust across the village. Inside his small house, he kept asking himself one question. If nobody helps us, what happens next? Before sunrise, William climbed the tallest hill near the village. From there, he could see miles of dry land. No rivers, no lakes, nothing. Only endless brown earth. As he stood there thinking, he noticed an old man sitting beneath a lonely tree. The old man was calmly carving a piece of wood with a small knife. His white beard moved gently in the wind. This was George. Everyone respected George, not because he was rich, not because he was powerful. People respected him because he never panicked. When everyone else became confused, George became calm. William walked toward him. "Good morning," George smiled. "Is it really a good morning?" William looked toward the dying village. "I don't think so." George nodded. "I was waiting for someone." William looked surprised. "For me?" George laughed softly. "Not exactly. I was waiting for the first person who would stop complaining and start asking questions." William sat beside him. "I have many questions." George looked toward the horizon. "Good," William sighed. "Our village has almost no water left. Everyone keeps praying that someone will come." George remained silent. After a few moments, William asked, "Do you think someone will?" George picked up a tiny seed lying on the ground. He held it between his fingers. "This seed has 2 choices. William listened carefully. It can spend its whole life waiting for rain. George gently placed the seed into the dry soil. Or it can prepare itself to grow the very moment the rain finally comes. William frowned. I don't understand. George smiled. Most people believe success begins when conditions become perfect. He slowly stood up. But success begins the moment you stop waiting. Those words stayed inside William's mind. George pointed toward the distant mountains. Have you ever been there? William shook his head. No. There is an old spring hidden beyond those mountains. William's eyes widened. A spring? George nodded. When I was a young man, I traveled there with my father. William stood immediately. If there's water, why don't we bring it here? George looked directly into William's eyes. Because the distance is too great. How far? More than 20 kilometers. William became quiet. George continued. Between here and that spring are hard rocks, steep hills, and solid ground. William slowly sat back down. So it's impossible. George smiled again. I did not say impossible. William looked confused. I said difficult. There is a very big difference. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. The wind continued blowing across the empty fields. Finally, William asked, What if we dig a canal? George looked at him carefully. Who is we? William answered without thinking. The whole village. George slowly shook his head. They won't. Why? Because hungry people fear long journeys. They'll understand if I explain. George smiled sadly. No. William's confidence slowly disappeared. They'll laugh. George nodded. Yes. They'll call me foolish. George nodded again. Yes. They won't help. George looked at William with complete calm. Most likely. William looked down at the dry ground. Then what should I do? George answered with only 4 words. Start before they believe. William looked up. George continued. People almost never believe in the beginning. They believe after results appear. If you wait for everyone's support before taking the first step, you may spend your entire life waiting. William felt those words like a hammer inside his heart. George picked up his walking stick. Let me ask you one final question. William nodded. If nobody comes, George paused, will you still dig? The question echoed inside William's mind. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. William looked toward his dying village. He remembered the empty buckets, his sick mother, the thirsty children, the dying farms. Then he took a deep breath. His voice was quiet, but it carried something new. Yes. George smiled. For the first time that morning, William wasn't waiting for someone to save the village anymore. He was preparing to become the person who would. William returned to the village before sunset. His clothes were still covered with dust, but his eyes looked different. For the first time in many days, he had a direction. That night, he spread a few old pieces of cloth on the floor of his house and began drawing lines with a piece of charcoal. He tried to imagine the shortest path from the hidden spring to the village. He had never built anything in his life. He did not know how engineers worked. He only knew one thing: water always flows downhill. So before he could dig a canal, he had to understand the land. For the next 7 days, while everyone searched for water, William climbed hills, measured slopes with ropes, placed small stones on the ground, and watched how rainwater from an old storm had once flowed through the valleys. Many people laughed when they saw him. What is he doing? Maybe the sun has made him crazy. Drawing lines won't bring water. William heard every word, but he remembered George's question. If nobody comes, will you still dig? His answer remained the same. Yes. One morning he picked up an old shovel that had belonged to his father. Its wooden handle was cracked. The metal blade was rusty. It was the only tool he owned. He walked to the edge of the village, took one deep breath, and pushed the shovel into the hard ground. The first strike barely made a mark. The second strike hurt his hands. The third strike shook his entire body. The soil was harder than stone. By sunset, he had dug less than 3 meters. His palms were bleeding. His shoulders burned with pain. When he reached home, his mother quietly cleaned his hands. She did not ask him to stop. She simply smiled and said, "Your father always said that hands with honest wounds are more beautiful than hands that never worked." The next morning, William returned, and the next, and the next. Days slowly became weeks. Every sunrise began with the same sound: clang, clang, clang. The village had become used to hearing that lonely rhythm. Some people still laughed. Others ignored him. A few even became angry. "You are wasting your strength. You should spend your time finding food. You cannot fight a mountain." William never argued. Every minute spent explaining was a minute he could spend digging. George visited him from time to time. He never helped with the shovel. Instead, he helped with something even more valuable: his mind. One afternoon, William threw the shovel onto the ground. "I can't do this anymore." "Ugh." George calmly sat on a nearby rock. "What happened?" William pointed ahead. "I have worked for almost a month, and look." The canal stretched only a short distance. The mountains still looked impossibly far away. "I am losing." "Ah," George smiled. "No." William looked frustrated. "I've barely made any progress." "Ah." George picked up the shovel and placed it back into William's hands. "Tell me, when you planted seeds as a child, did they grow the next morning?" "No." "When you learned to walk, did you run on the first day?" "No." "Then why do you expect great achievements to appear quickly?" William stayed silent. George continued, "People overestimate what they can do in one day, but they underestimate what they can do in 1 year. Never judge your future by today's distance. Judge it by today's direction." Those words became William's new strength. He stopped counting meters. Instead, he promised himself something simple. Every single day, one more step. No matter how tired, no matter how slow, one more step. Summer became hotter. The ground became harder. Sometimes the shovel struck solid rock. There were places where digging was impossible. Instead of giving up, William learned to collect large stones, heat them with fire during the night, then pour cold water over them at sunrise. The rocks cracked, little by little. It was slower than digging, but it worked. He learned because he refused to stop learning. One evening, after nearly 3 months, a terrible storm arrived. Strong winds shook the village. Heavy rain fell through the night. For the first time in months, people celebrated. "The drought is over!" But William could not celebrate. The next morning, he ran to his canal. His heart sank. Large sections had collapsed. Weeks of work had disappeared. Mud filled the trench. Huge rocks blocked the path. William stood there in complete silence. His knees slowly touched the ground. For several minutes, he stared at the destruction. He felt empty. Later that afternoon, George found him sitting beside the broken canal. "I failed." George looked at the damaged ground. "No, it is gone. No, I have to begin again." George nodded. "Exactly." William looked at him with tired eyes. "I don't understand." George picked up 2 small branches. He broke one with almost no effort. Then he twisted the second branch again and again before trying to break it. It became much harder. "Life does something interesting," George said. "It doesn't test your first plan. It tests whether you can build a better second one." William looked at the ruined canal again. George smiled. "The rain didn't destroy your dream. It showed you where your dream was weak." That sentence changed everything. Instead of rebuilding the canal exactly the same way, William made it stronger. He widened the narrow parts. He placed stones along the edges. He created small drainage paths so rainwater could escape instead of destroying the canal again. His work became slower, but much smarter. Months passed. The seasons slowly changed. William's body changed too. The weak young man who had started digging was gone. His shoulders had become stronger. His hands were covered with thick calluses. His face was darker from the sun. His mind had become even stronger than his body. One cold morning, a little boy walked toward William, carrying a small bottle of water. "My mother said you might need this." William smiled. It was the first gift anyone had given him. The next day, another child came. Then an old woman brought him a piece of bread. No one joined him with a shovel. But something had changed. The village had stopped laughing. People had started respecting silent effort. William realized something important. Real leadership does not begin when people follow you. It begins when your actions become impossible to ignore. As winter arrived, William finally reached the last rocky hill before the hidden spring. Only one wall of solid stone remained between him and the flowing water George had spoken about. He placed both hands against the cold rock. For a moment, he closed his eyes. He remembered the empty well, his mother's smile, George's words, the people who laughed, the people who left, the months of loneliness. Everything had led him to this final obstacle. He slowly lifted his father's old shovel. Its wooden handle was worn smooth from months of work. He smiled quietly. "This is not the end," he whispered. "This is the place where everything begins." Then, with every bit of strength left inside him, William struck the rock. The sound of the shovel echoed across the silent hill. Once, twice, again. William kept striking the rock with everything he had left. Hours passed. Nothing happened. His hands shook with exhaustion. His breathing became heavy. His old shovel bent under the pressure. For the first time in many months, doubt returned. What if I was wrong? What if there is no spring? What if everyone who laughed was right? He closed his eyes for a moment. Then he remembered something George had once said. "The greatest battle is never against the mountain. It is against the voice that tells you to stop." William tightened his grip. One more strike. A small crack appeared. He stared at it. Then another strike. The crack became larger. Suddenly, a tiny stream of clear water escaped through the rock. William stepped back in complete silence. Within seconds, the small stream became stronger. Cold, fresh water rushed out of the mountain. For the first time in almost a year, William smiled without forcing himself. Tears rolled down his face, not because the journey was over, but because hope was alive. He quickly ran beside the canal, watching the water begin its long journey toward the village. The water flowed beautifully for a while. Then, it stopped. William froze. Several hundred meters ahead, the canal was blocked. During the long months of digging, loose soil and small rocks had slowly collected inside one narrow section. The water could not pass. William looked toward the village far away. He looked back at the blocked canal. He had almost no strength left. His hands were bleeding again. His legs could barely carry him. No one knew the water had reached the canal. No one was coming. He could have waited until morning. He could have gone back and asked for help. Instead, he picked up the shovel one more time. As the sun slowly disappeared, William worked alone. When darkness covered the valley, he continued. When the moon rose into the sky, he was still digging. Every time he removed one stone, another appeared. Every time he became tired, he remembered the children standing beside the empty well. Just before sunrise, the final stone rolled away. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then a powerful wave of water rushed through the canal. It raced downhill faster and faster. William followed it as quickly as he could. His heart pounded, his eyes filled with tears. The water crossed every hill, every turn, every valley, until finally it entered the village. At first, nobody noticed. Then a little girl filling an empty pot screamed with, "Water!" People ran from every direction. The dry canal that had been empty for generations was suddenly alive. Fresh water flowed through the center of the village. Children, old men, women fell to their knees in gratitude. Farmers stood speechless. Some touched the water as if they could not believe it was real. Others simply looked at William. The same young man they had called foolish, the same young man they had ignored. No celebration could erase the words they had once spoken. Several villagers walked toward William with tears in their eyes. "We were wrong. We laughed at you. We should have helped." William looked at them quietly. Then he smiled. "If you truly want to help," he pointed toward the flowing canal, "protect it. Keep it clean. Teach your children why it exists. Never allow another generation to wait for someone else to save them." From that day forward, the village changed in a way no one expected. The greatest change was not that they finally had water. The greatest change was that they stopped waiting for heroes. Young people began repairing broken roads without being told. Farmers started working together instead of blaming each other. Families planted hundreds of new trees beside the canal to protect the soil. Children grew up hearing one sentence again and again: "If something is important, begin." Years later, travelers passing through the village always asked the same question: "Who built this canal?" The villagers never pointed toward the canal first. They pointed toward a simple wooden shovel hanging inside the village hall. Below it were only a few words. One person started, everyone benefited. Many years later, George sat beside the flowing water with William. Both of them had grown older. George smiled as he watched children playing near the canal. "Tell me, William, what was the hardest part?" William looked at the water for a long time before answering. "It wasn't the rocks. It wasn't the heat. It wasn't the loneliness." George nodded. "What was it then?" William smiled. "Believing that one small step still mattered when nothing around me seemed to change." George, that is why most dreams die. People don't fail because they are weak. They fail because they expect visible results before invisible progress has had enough time to grow. Then George looked directly at William. "Remember this. Doing it alone does not mean you will always be alone. It means you are brave enough to begin before anyone else believes." Those words stayed with William for the rest of his life.
And now, before this story ends, I want to speak to you personally. Maybe your canal is not made of dirt. Maybe your canal is your dream, your business, your studies, your health, your family, or the person you want to become. Right now, you may be waiting for the perfect opportunity, waiting for friends to support you, waiting for motivation, waiting until life becomes easier. But the truth is, most successful people did not begin because everything was ready. They began because they were tired of waiting. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You don't need a crowd standing behind you. Sometimes the first person who must believe in your dream is you. Your progress may be invisible for weeks or even months. People may laugh. People may ignore your efforts. Some may even tell you to quit. Let them. Because one day your results will speak so loudly that your explanations will no longer be necessary. If this story inspired you, don't just admire William. Learn from him. Find the one thing you have been delaying and take the first step today. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Woolly Tales and become part of this journey where every story is designed to make us mentally stronger, emotionally wiser, and better human beings. And before you leave, I highly recommend watching my previous story, Mastering Happiness. It beautifully explains that true happiness is not something you find one day. It is something you build through your daily choices. I truly believe it will change the way you look at life. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep moving forward, and remember, sometimes the person you have been waiting for is already looking back at you in the mirror.